All right, so welcome to my session about developing in the distributed application world. I'm gonna talk today about Dapper, mostly Dapper. Basically, we're gonna see a bit of Kubernetes and of course Azure. So I'm Stefan Eskens, I'm an Azure MVP and cloud architect. Feel free to follow me on Twitter. This is my Twitter handle here. I have some GitHub repos as well that you can, of course, visit. And of course, we can connect on LinkedIn as well. So I'd like to thank the organizers for having me today. So I hope that this CodeGen edition is going to be a great one. I listened to the organizers, so there will be only a few slides, not too much, let's say, mostly live demos. But still, before diving into demos, I'd like to first introduce a little bit Dapper for those who really have no clue of what Dapper is all about. So, and also the reason why I proposed that session is because in cloud and cloud native applications, well, you realize that when you build such applications, they are distributed by nature. And so it can be a bit challenging. So, there is a big trend about microservices, but even in a service-oriented architecture, the components somehow are decoupled, and so we are not in the monolithic world anymore. And that's sometimes a bit challenging to, let's say, connect the dots because at some point they need to connect, right? So, and Dapper helps you doing that. And so Dapper helps you with all the concerns that we see on screen here. So basically, it's a distributed application runtime, right? That you can use in your applications for all these concerns. So service to service invocation. So for synchronous communication from one service to another. For state management. So we all know that, well, stateless services are, let's say, scalable, but we also all know that state is often necessary, right? So, but of course, offload states to external state stores, and that's how we can keep scaling, right? And Dapper will help you dealing with that as well. So publish and subscribe, so really PubSub. So in every distributed application, you have event-driven and messaging or message-based, let's say, applications. So you will need to deal with a service bus with an event hub. And there again, Dapper can help you dealing with that. And when I say dealing with that, it means that it helps you abstracting away the actual service that you are using. So if we go to Azure, you might use Azure Service Bus or Event Hub, but you might also go to Amazon or something else, and Dapper will make it transparent for the application. So that's really the value proposal. Same with resource bindings and triggers. So for instance, if you have a blob that lands on the blob storage, that's somehow an event as well. You might want to kick up something like a bit the bindings. You can see that a bit as the bindings of Azure Functions. And by the way, Dapper also integrates with the Azure Functions. So you also have the Actor model that was mostly used in Service Fabric, that is mostly used in Service Fabric, and Microsoft brought that to Dapper as well. And of course, Dapper helps you to have a better observability. And it helps you deal with secrets. So because we know that every application at some point needs some sensitive information like credentials or whatever. In Azure, you would typically store that in Azure Key Vault, but again, Dapper can abstract this away. So that's Dapper in a nutshell. If you want to know more about Dapper, of course, you can visit their GitHub repo. That's the link here. So, well, that's all for the theory, basically. Maybe just one more word on theory. So here is a small map, if you want, that I built myself to show the stores to which Dapper connects to, right? So we see the concerns that we've seen earlier, so PubSub and so on, and you see that, it's an impressive list of systems that Dapper can interact with. So you see Amazon, Azure, Google Cloud, but also like, for instance, tools, services like RabbitMQ, Redis, and so on. Secrets, I was just referring to secrets. You see Azure Key Vault, Azure Vault, AWS, well, and the like. So basically, really a lot of stores, and I think this map is already probably outdated. And that's something important as well before I dive into demos, is also that Dapper is completely language agnostic. So it works with everything, providing that the language you work with is able to make HTTP requests. So I guess it's normally available in every programming language, or gRPC, because Dapper actually gives you the facilities to interact with all these stores, right, through HTTP or gRPC. But of course, it also comes with like some language SDK. So like, for instance, for .NET Core, Dapr provides a .NET Core SDK just because it feels more natural for the developer, right? But you can, of course, use Dapr with raw HTTP or raw gRPC. Okay, with that said, let's see the 3 demos we'll have today. So it's basically I built, and also you might see here books. It's because I just finished the book, right? Should be published during this month. And basically, I will just replay an example that I built for the book, right? So to not reinvent the wheel myself. And basically here we have 3 services. And you know, it's typical example when you talk about microservices. So we have an order processing service. We have a shipping service that will basically start the shipping process upon order, let's say, creation. And but what I want to illustrate in this exercise or in this example is basically the communication aspects, right? I don't care about the orders basically. I just care about the synchronous and asynchronous communication and see how to make this available in the .NET Core app. So that's so all these services here will be a .NET Core or are built with .NET Core. So in this example, I'm gonna use Fiddler to simply push an order request. And what we see here, so it's of course a synchronous communication, direct invocation here. And then we have this order processing service that listens to a service bus topic, right? So it's Azure Service Bus. We have Event Hub. So whenever an order will be created and processed, this guy will push an event on Event Hub. So I just wanted to mix a bit the services for the demonstration purposes, because of course you could have just stick to Service Bus for this as well. And then the shipping service will listen to events coming from the Event Hub, and then we'll start the shipping process. But before starting it, it will check again the direct invocation within Dapr, the order query service, to get, let's say, extra details about the order. So that's a bit this demo. And then the second demo, and by the way, so I will replay that, so you don't need to buy the book, it's just available in on GitHub, right? So already today. So and here it's going to be the same example, but we'll add a Azure API management to the mix. So instead of using Fiddler, I will still use Fiddler basically, but I will talk to Azure API management. And then so it's just to show as well, like adding an extra input channel with Dapr, and also because Dapr integrates with Azure API management, so it's interesting to show and know, of course. And the last one will be about Dapr workflows. And if time permits, but it might be a bit short, we could play a bit with Cosmos DB as well. So I've prepared some stuff, we'll see. Okay, so end of slide. So I'm gonna start, let's say, with Demo. So we'll really go, let's say, from scratch. So I'm gonna create a new resource group, right? So that I will call Gen. Of course, let's pray the demo God that everything will go smoothly because it's really live, let's say, as you can see here. So let me do this. And in the meantime, so the resource group is of course empty because I've just created it. So in the meantime, here is the GitHub repo of the book, right, with the code samples and so on. So here it's chapter 5, and I'm going basically to deploy or to provision the infrastructure that I need, right? So it's all available here. So it's this file, so we'll see it in a minute, but I will first start the deployment, right? So I have a Cloud Shell here, and I will basically deploy this guy. So it's just a direct query to this file here and start the deployment. So it will prompt me for to provide a namespace. So I'll just call it that. So it's actually running. And so while it deploys, I can already show a bit of code. So that's the infrastructure here. It's of course not yet related to Dapr. I will just copy paste that to online viewer just so that it's more readable. So, and we see here the resource that this guy is provisioning to Azure, right? So it's just ARM templates. And so what we deploy is an Event Hub namespace. We'll deploy an Event Hub within that namespace. Then we'll deploy a consumer group. So the consumer group is basically how Event Hub dispatches events across consumer groups if you have multiple, and then that's basically the listeners will subscribe if you want to the consumer group. So it's somehow a bit equivalent to a topic on a service bus, although it's a bit different. But anyway, and then we have the service bus itself. We'll have a a topic on that service bus, right? So that's where, let's say, my API management, for instance, will publish topics, message, sorry, against that topic. And then we have like a storage account that's required for, let's say, Dapper when it reads from the service, from the Event Hub to persist the state to see where it is in the Event Hub, let's say, reading. And then a container onto that, let's say, storage account. So now it seems to be deployed. So let's have a look. Let's refresh this guy. We have indeed all three resources. So I will actually go further and I will basically download the repo, right? So that I can really put you in the same condition as if you were doing yourself the exercise. So I'm going to download this, right? So on my machine, okay. So I'll copy this guy, good. So code gen, and actually I'll say, you know, just a new folder, code. So I'll just unzip this guy here, or extract it here. Okay, so I'll just make it a smaller name, because shorter name, because otherwise it's going to be unreadable in the command prompts and so on. So let's say folder, just to say something. And then we go to chapter 5, code, and let's say we have all three services here, right? So that's the one that were on this slide here, right? So order, shipping, and order query. So before I can start them, I need, of course, to configure Dapper to connect to the right store. So as you can see here, I've just provisioned the infrastructure. So of course, these guys have new connection strings and so on because they've just been provisioned. So how does the magic happen with Dapper, right? It's magic, but of course, you still need to help it a bit. Is that, of course, for Dapper to be able to connect to, in this case, Service Bus and Event Hub, you need to give information about the topic names, about the connection strings, of course, right? So it's actually mostly connection strings. So, and that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to grab, let's say, the connection string of my Event Hub namespace. I can also close this guy. And then I will take the shared access signature. Come on. Or the connection string, sorry, in this case, copy, and I will update a component file. So that's how Dapper works, right? So this is, wait, that's not the right folder. I'll close this guy. That was from the previous. Okay, let me find it back. Okay, that's here. So chapter 5, okay, code. So I'll go to my order service and then to the components folder. So, and then here we talk about the Event Hub. So that's the Event Hub component. So, I mean, for Dapper, it's just like a pub/sub .azure Event Hubs. And of course, if you connect to Amazon or something else, you'll have a different type here, right? So, or different, let's say, yeah, suffix, I would say. So here, I need to put the connection string of my namespace. Okay, so that's what I do here. And then I'll grab the details about the storage account. So I'll come back here, go to my CodeGen resource group, and then go to the storage account. Okay, so take also the connection string. Oh, here it's actually the key. So I will take this key, which is basically this one. And I have to take the storage account name, which is this. Okay, and with that, I'm ready. So basically, packed, this container has been created by the infrastructure as code bits that you saw me deploying. So let me save this guy. So, or Event Hub, let's say, component is ready. So now we need to grab the details about Service Bus. And so, for instance, here you see that a topic has been created, right? No subscription yet. So that's the Dapper topic that that was in the ISE code, right? So let's go to shared access signature again, copy this, and then the configuration work will be over. Okay, so I'm taking this guy, updating this component here, save, and now I will basically copy and paste this guy. These guys, let's say, into my shipping service. So and overwrite the default provided files. Okay, so now the config is ready. So we should be able to start them. So let's see. I'm gonna go to the shipping service, open a PowerShell window, and we're gonna start our service with Dapper. So here I'm gonna use Dapper locally, right? So it's not, and then later on we'll use Dapper from Kubernetes itself. So okay. or here I'm gonna start, let's say, the shipping service, and I do that with Dapper Run, right? And with Dapper Run, you need to give basically an app identifier. Okay, as you see here, so I already did that before, so that's why I have the command history. So, and you see here, starting the shipping service, so you have to give an identifier to the app, right? That's how Dapper can, for instance, make service discovery. And then you, of course, provide the component path, if any component, and then you basically tell the port to which your application is listening to. So I'm gonna basically use this guy here and start it, right? So I'm now gonna open another window to start my two other services. So basically two windows, but one by one. So shipping service, so I'm going to the order service. We'll see the code, of course, after that. So, okay, so same here, Dapper Run, but this time it's gonna be the order service, right? So just starting on another port. And then while this guy is starting, I will already start the third service. Then we'll come back for a second to the, so I'll maybe do that, and then go manually, cd manually to the order query service, and then start the order query service, right? So that's gonna be run app ID order query service. Okay. So something important to show maybe is that you see here, so it's up and running, so it's a good news. Yeah, sometimes you test locally, you might have issues. It also needs a Docker, right? So sometimes you might have issues, and then I'm using Docker Desktop on my machine, so sometimes you just need to restart Docker Desktop. It's not intended really to use Dapper locally, so it's normally its natural ecosystem is Kubernetes. So, but here it's easy as well for demo purposes. So, and you see here that when it starts, basically it shows that it's trying to find some components, right? So if I go a bit upper here, you see component loaded, Dapper event hub, and Dapper service. These are my components. So here, normally, if everything goes well, let's see, I should already have, let's say, a subscription on my topic. Right, so, and you see indeed, now I have one subscription. So we've just provisioned infrastructure, just a little bit of configuration work afterwards, and we have an application already up and running. So let's see if that really works fine. So for this, I will craft some queries. So it's probably my age, but I stick to Fiddler instead of Postman for some reasons. But okay, it doesn't matter. So I'll just come back to the CodeGen folder. And I have some queries basically that I want to show. Wait, where are these queries? It's here. Okay, so I'm gonna basically simulate the creation, but really ask the creation of an order. So I'm gonna make a HTTP post request against this guy that I started locally in my machine, right? So, and I'm gonna pass, let's say, a payload body, which is of course like a bit fake, of course, so I'm not really creating an order and so on. Again, the important bits here are the communication aspects between the services, right? So let's just try to see if I execute this guy. Okay, it seems to work, right? So let's see, it should have generated some activity. So that's here indeed. You see that this is the order service. So it says, okay, it created and processed an order. So that should have awakened the shipping service as well. So let me switch and go to, for instance, that's the order query service. So it got called by the shipping service, and normally the shipping service is here. And you see that it says, okay, I received a new event from Event Hub, and it started to ship the process. So, and of course, it started the shipment after having queried the order query service. So you see that basically it's actually working. So let's come back for a second here, right? So to see again the flow. So if I make it bigger, so you see, so what happens is that I pushed a direct request. I directly invoked my local service orders processing service. This guy has pushed a message to service bus that is awaking actually a method of the same service. That is just for the fun, I would say, because of course you could just create it directly. And then this guy, after creation, has pushed an event to Event Hub, and the shipping service grabbed the event and then called the order query service. That's all communication plumbing that happened behind the scenes. So let's see the code now of this, and then we'll see with Apim, but code first, let's say. So I'm gonna go here, folder, and then this is chapter 5. code. So let me open the solution here with Visual Studio. Okay, so yeah, my machine is a bit saturated, so that's why it's a bit slow. Sorry for this. So here we'll see basically again, remember that Dapper can be used with any language, right? But since we have a Dapper SDK for .NET Core, we can use, of course, the Dapper SDK, but that's absolutely not a must. So, but of course, when you do this, then it integrates nicely with the framework, right? With the .NET Core framework in this case. So for instance, here to integrate Dapper to your services, you simply have to add Dapper in the startup, right? So just to do this, and you're already good to go. And then what it gives you, of course, is the DI injection, right, through the command, through the controller, in this case, the controller constructor, right? So here now from the so I get a Dapper client as part of my that is injected in my constructor. And so here you see that basically I just really made very tiny services just to show again demo purposes and the plumbing, let's say, how that works. What we see here is that this is maybe it's a bit small, so I will make it a bit bigger. This is the method here that basically I was called, right? So simply declare a route, right? And that's about it. And then that's the one I called with Fiddler. And then this guy is publishing, as you can see, an event here. So it's publishing this event to my Dapper SB component, right? So it's the name of the component, doesn't need to be the actual name of the service, in this case in Azure. And then it's publishing that to the Dapper topic. Remember, we had a Dapper topic, so that's what it does here. So now a message has been queued to that topic. And so what happens here now is that this method here is actually listening to that topic. So if I just make it a bit bigger, you see that it's also just to decorate the method with the topic, attribute, and give it the path, let's say, so component name and topic name, and then Dapper subscribes to it. So it's very easy, not much work to do on your side, right? So, and then here again, what I'm doing here is that, okay, I'm just logging the fact that I processed, of course, the order. I'm not really creating an order, as you can see. And then I notify my Event Hub. Let's say I publish the event all over Event Hub, and that is calling actually this third method that we see here, right? So, and this guy here is basically I'm using the Dapper client that I received in the injection or in the constructor, and then I'm simply again using Dapper event, the component name, right? And here there is a bit some sort of weird stuff with the Event Hub, for instance, is that the convention is that you have to give the component name and the topic name, but in Azure, Event Hub doesn't have a topic name, so you need to give something. It cannot be empty nor null. So I just gave a name, right? But basically, normally in Event Hub itself, that's not really required. Anyway, okay, so that's for the order service. And then if I look at the order or the shipping service, well, order maybe first the order query. It's really nothing special. So I have loaded fake orders in memory, right? So no database and so on. And so on, I'm passing, of course, an order that I know that is found. You can also work with a non-found order. It will just return you a 404. And I'm just, let's say, checking in my list of orders if the order exists or not. So again, that's just for demo purpose, so nothing specific to Dapper in this case. So the other Dapper part, let's say, is in the shipping service. So if I look here, shipping controller, this guy then has also a route to, or is also listening to the Dapper Event Hub in this case, right? So a component name, and then here shipping makes is important because that's the name of the consumer group. So in this case, Dapper subscribes to that consumer group. And basically here I'm just making some basic tests, like because you could handle multiple event types, and also the book is not about Dapper, it's just about Azure, and then Dapper is one of the examples of, let's say, for the application architecture that I wanted to demonstrate. But also by this example where I switch event type, I also wanted to show that with Event Hub, the consumer groups, you can't filter, like you can do with service-based topic, right, or subscription. So I also wanted to illustrate this kind of thing. But here what's important for Dapper is that before I really ship or not, depending if the order exists or not, then I'm actually calling the getOrder method, which is also making a direct invocation So that's the service discovery I was referring to earlier. So you only need to know the app identifier, or let's say the service ID that you want to call, right? So it's very easy then, you don't need to know where it is. And in the Kubernetes cluster, you might have cross namespaces, queries, of course, single scope namespace queries as well. So, I mean, you might have a ton of services in the microservice architecture. So it's very handy to only need to know the name or the identifier, let's say, of that service, and that's it, right? Now, of course, you need to know the methods, right, that this service exposes. And by the way, here, but Dapr is a moving target, really moving fast. But here, this method that you see is actually invoking the service in gRPC, right? So even not in HTTP. That's why in the catch block here that you see, I'm checking, let's say, or extracting the error from the gRPC core exception. So that's about it. So that's for, let's say, this tiny demo on these different services, but you see that everything seems to work fine. So it's actually time to go to our second demo, which is about adding Apim to the mix, right? So I'll keep maybe this guy opened, or well, actually no, I will go to Apim directly. So for this one, I already provisioned the API management instance because it takes time to provision that. So, and also I'm using that for other stuff. So here, it's my API management instance. I have some APIs, right? And one of them is actually the Dapr API, right? So I created a small Dapr API, right? And here, what I want to show here as well is that, again, I work, let's say, with many developers and system engineers, and sometimes I see a trend of developers to reinvent the wheel, right, to rebuild all the abstraction layers themselves and so on. While, for instance, frameworks like Dapr, although not production ready yet, can do that much better than you could do, probably. So it's better to leverage such frameworks instead of doing everything on your own. But here, if I take the post method here, it's even a quite interesting example, because basically, let me just make a bit more space here. Here I have another channel, right? So I'm adding another channel to my order service, right? With no code, right? So that's a code-free, let's say, there is no backend service behind this guy. So here I issue. Okay, hopefully you still hear me. Okay, so fine. I'm back, it seems. So basically here, so I have this the method that I created, and then we have the some Apim policies. I'll zoom on to that just a bit later, but just to show you, there is no backend service. Come on. Quite slow. There is no backend service, as you can see, so everything is handled through policies. And basically what this channel will allow me to do is to publish a message to service bus and then get the stuff back. So and then let's say awake my services. So I'm gonna test this guy, right? So but I will just grab the URL here. So and then I'll explain how it works behind the scenes. So it's just now I'm gonna go through my Apim instance, right, to come back to send the same payload. And of course, I will also need to add this subscription key. And then I will run, and it fails. And that's normal, because actually you saw me provisioning the infrastructure, right? It's a new infrastructure, so with new services, and of course with different connection strings. So same goes for, of course, my Dapr, let's say, component that is inside my Kubernetes cluster, which I've not updated yet. So if we look at the error, we'll see that, okay, it cannot go to the Dapr pub/sub blah blah blah. So it's so in my policy that I'm trying to go to that pub/sub component and to the topic called Dapr, and then it failed, right? And it failed because my component has not been updated. So now I can show you, let's say here, I will need yet an extra PowerShell window. So PowerShell, and I will show you actually how that works from in this case from more a hosting perspective. So I have an AKS cluster, and I have installed the self-hosted gateway of Azure API Management, right? And only the self-hosted gateway can work together with Dapr. And the reason is because, of course, you need to inject the gateway with Dapper, which you can't do with the Microsoft hosted gateways because you don't have, let's say, you cannot put your hands around these guys. So here, if I just run my, let's say, list the pods that I have in my, let's say, namespace in this case, you see this is this guy. So this pod has two containers, one that is the self-hosted gateway of Microsoft, and the other one that is the Dapper D container. So Dapper D container, so Dapper is leveraging a very popular, let's say, pattern called the sidecar pattern, and which consists in injecting, let's say, an application container with some, let's say, with some other containers that have that typical transversal duties, right? So that's the principle of service mesh and so on. So here I have then my gateway, and then this guy is actually also need a component to reach out to my service, and that's why it fails here, because my component here, this is this guy, right? My component doesn't have the right connection string. So if I just do a kubectl get component and then it's Dapper is B. Oh shit, that's not sorry. Thought I had copied it, but it seems. So I should have typed it, would have been faster anyway. And then I just list the component. So it's from a previous, of course, demo, if you could say. You see that this connection string is, of course, wrong because I have not updated yet, right? It was from the previous instance of a service bit that I have already destroyed. So now I will simply take this guy here, right? So we have the chapter 5. This is the correct one. So I've already updated the component here. So I'll just reapply this guy. So I'll just open this guy. Okay, no namespace. So I will specify the namespace. So I will update, if you want, my component here with this comment. Then I'm gonna take then the Dapper, yes. So Dapper, or the, what was the name again? Oh, Pact, sorry. Pact SB. Okay, so, and that will override my component here. So now, if I retry, it will still fail, but still I want to show you. And it will still fail because, of course, well, of course, it could have been different maybe, but it's not. So I told you Dapper is injected through the sidecar mechanism, and the sidecar, or the Dapper D container, only, let's say, discover components at startup, right? So here it's already started, so I need to restart my to restart my pod to have the new components loaded in memory. So let's try it out. Let's switch back here. Okay, I can maybe clear this guy. And for this, I'll just gonna get pod again. So this is this guy that I'm gonna stop and then restart if you want. So I'm gonna do that with scale deploy, right? So this is, well, I'm just instructing Kubernetes to stop this, let's say, deployment, and I will actually scale it out again to 1. And if I get the pods, so some should be terminating, some should be in container creating mode, until at some point it should really be starting, right? So here we have 2 on 2 running. So normally here, if the debug gods are with us or with me, it should actually be working now. So if I just, and by the way, I can try to put windows in, let's say, cascading windows, just to show that there is some activity. So if I now test it and if everything works fine, you should see that when I go to the Composer tab and I rerun this guy, well, of course, it's the first call, it's a dev instance, took a bit of time, but you see here that indeed I received a new event, right? So, oh, sorry, yeah. Oh, did I? Actually, I'm not sure. Let me see. Let me see, because actually I should have received an event. So let me see if the order service is still running. For sure, the order query also no. Okay, so there is something wrong. So debug gods are not with me. Ah, you see, it's crashing actually. So good. So let's see quickly. Yeah, I cannot spend too much time trying to debug this guy. So maybe it's some weirdness of Docker here. So let me see. Middleware, okay, it's not happy with something here. I will also, yeah, for sure, then it tried to dequeue, right, the message, because if you see here, of course, this is what caused, or maybe it crashed intermittently, let's say on its own. So let's just try to restart this guy to see if it's related to this, or if it's really the fact that I'm sending an event through AppIm that is, or an order through AppIm that is basically making it crash. So, okay, up and running, not yet. Okay, up and running, so let me see. Okay, so let me execute this guy. Okay, now I think it was crashed before. So for some reason, as I told you, Dapper is really not intended to be run locally like this. Plus, I also lost at some point connectivity, I noticed. So maybe that's what made it crash. I don't know. Anyway, so here, if we then see, I receive new orders, as you can see here, and if I run this guy, let's say, if I rerun this guy, let's say 5 times, for instance, or let's say 10 times, then of course I can basically use also, so here, the query service, sorry, you see that I received new orders, but I can also then use other AppIm policies, right? So here I use a throttling policy to say, okay, you cannot queue for a given subscriber, you cannot place more than 5 orders, let's say a minute, because that would be an abusive, let's say, usage of the service, right? So you can then do that for free, I would say, without the need to code anything. So let's maybe have a quick look at the policy itself. So, so that's in my design, sorry, this method here, or this endpoint, where I basically created some policies, right? And so here, that's the rate limiting policy. So that's why I had throttling responses, right, from AppIm, because I said only 10 calls per minute are allowed. And then the publish to Dapper, as you can see here, you just simply say, okay, pub name, like in code, basically. And here I just specify the topic. And I'm basically capturing the response, Dapper's response in the variable. You can also then throw it in case of error, and then I just pass the request body that I received, and it's pushed basically to my service bus, right? So it's quite handy. So it's a no code again, new channel that you add to the mix, right? So here, I think I had an issue with my internet connection, and that's probably what broke my local services here. But anyway, let me then now stop these services. So, and then I can show you as well the Dapper stop. So we'll see the order. I've just restarted it. So let's see, shipping, I think, was also a bit, okay, it could stop it still. And then the order query. Okay, so here you've seen then these 3 services talking together in a synchronous and asynchronous way, right? I've added then AppIm to the mix, AppIm communicating to service bus through a Dapper policy. And so basically that's a bit what we've seen so far. So what I can now show you is, let's say before showing you the workflows, I will first list my pods, see if everything is still running. So the last demo is going to be about workflows, but I want to first show you a bit, let's say, how Dapper deals with, let's say, state stores. So in the nutshell, of course, we would need more than 19 minutes that we have left, but so that you have a glimpse of how it handles with this. So here, what I'm going to do for this is that I'm going to port forward this pod that you see here, right? I'm going to port forward the traffic so that I can interact with this guy from my local machine. So let me just do this. So from now on, I should be able to send requests to this guy, right? So so it's just easier for demo purposes, and I will basically then maybe close the windows that I don't need, so that we clean a bit, let's say, the screens, and this guy I will also, it's closed, that's good. So I'm just quitting here. Okay, so okay, what I want to show here is basically open my another, let's say, set of queries. So there are plenty of them here. So, but I want to first show is basically, for instance, how easy it is to extract a secret from a secret store. So here, if I just take this and I make a get query, right? Get requests. So just to show you how easy it is. So every application at some point needs some secrets, right? So here, what I'm doing here is that I port forwarded my my, let's say, container, right, to this local host. So that's why I can talk to it directly. So I'll basically try to extract a key from from a key vault. So I have an Azure Key Vault, and it contains a secret here, and you see that this has been extracted. So I just made, so if you had to deal with Dapr directly with row requests, that's how you would do, right? With Dapr, you basically target the endpoint, right, which is always localhost, or this one is of course equivalent to localhost, the Dapr port, so the Dapr port of the sidecar container, right? So you can also start it on a different port. Then of course here it's v1. By the way, it's not yet really v1. I mean, it's not production ready. It's still release candidates, and I think here it's RC4. And then the convention is that what's behind this, right, is then really what you want to do, right? So here I'm dealing with secret. I want to extract secret from secret store, so I'm typing secrets. If I want to invoke another service, I would have to type invoke, then /method, /service name, sorry. You see, so there is some convention here. And then if it's a state store, then you have to do state. You get, let's say, how it works, right? So it's pretty easy, even if you have to craft the request yourself manually. So, and here you see, so what I'm even doing in this case, so again, remember we are forwarding this guy, right? And this is inside Kubernetes, what I'm doing, or inside AKS to be more specific. And I'm leveraging the managed identities of Azure to reach out to Key Vault. So I don't even need to have, so basically Dapr itself doesn't need to know in this case the secret, let's say the credentials needed to go to Key Vault, because I'm leveraging the AAD pod identities inside Kubernetes. So it makes it very secure. And then once you have a secret component configured in your Kubernetes, you can use this guy as a reference in your other components so that you don't have to disclose any secret information in none of the components, right? So it's very, very powerful. So that was just to show for a simple component. So let's see now with, let's say, a state store. For this, I want to show you, let's say, a Cosmos DB that I have. So let me go to Cosmos. And then, well, it's actually used for something else normally, as you can see here, but I was a bit too lazy to create a new account and so on. So I'm just using the, well, the reusing one. That's anyway for my own use, so that's not an issue. And so here you see I have a Dapr collection, and I can make a new query on this guy. So first maybe show the items, as you can see here. So basically all what you see, how does Dapr works, right, with state store is that, and also, by the way, it's a precision I need to make. So it's really state store to store key value pairs. That's what Dapr does, right? Dapr will not help you dealing with very complex queries against a Cosmos DB or against a SQL database. No, it's just to store state, right? And then so you will basically say, okay, put something, the key will be something, and then the value is what you decide to define as value. And then when you get something, you just say, okay, give me that key, and then it will return you the value, just a state store, right? And so here, what it does is that you have let's say, a strategy that you can use for your keys, let's say, right? A state strategy. And so if you don't define anything, by default, it will prefix the identifier, if you want, with the name of the app. So for instance, here, if I take a new query, if I take my app here, remember it's the workflow host that I've injected with the port forward stuff. So what I'm gonna do here is that if I do workflow, I think I should have some stuff here. You see that I have 100 documents, right? So I have already a lot of keys, let's say, that belong to this workflow application, right? It's just because I played. And a few months ago, I noticed a bug, let's say, of Dapr, which I created an issue for on their GitHub, and they fixed it in the meantime. But just to show you a bit how it works, so you can get a key. So you see here, I have my key here, right? So to get a key from a state store, you simply say, okay, gonna basically talk to state store, state, right? And then the name of the component, I think out of memory that was state store that I give, and then the key, right? So let's see. It was then maybe, sometimes what happens is that you lose connectivity with your port forward, and I think that's what's going on here. Yeah, sometimes, or is that okay? So it's okay. You see, sometimes it's like a bug in the PowerShell, so nothing to do with Dapr, that you need to hit the enter key to wake it up. Anyway, so here you see that it basically returned the value of my key here, right? And if I, of course, put a key that does not exist, then it will return you a no content, right? Because it doesn't find it. So So sometimes they have weird ways of, let's say, dealing with conventions. Here in this case, I would have probably returned the 404, but anyway, that's how they do, so 204, which is also not wrong in the end. There is no content corresponding to this. Okay, so here, that's, let's say, when you make a simple get, right, of only one key, but you can also, they have also a bulk API. So basically you can add the bulk, right, and you can retrieve multiple keys at once. So if I, for instance, take this guy and I, let's say, do then a bulk, right? And then I'll say that it's a bulk query. Sorry, I'll actually put it correctly here. Then I also need to do a content type JSON again. So it should return me then 2 keys because I've asked 2 keys, right? So, and how it works is that if you basically similarly, if you basically ask for a key that does not exist, right? Let's say, then it will basically return, the key that does not exist then has no value, but it returns just the key itself. And then for the keys for which it found something, it does this. And what I noticed at some point, because I wanted to test a bit the, let's say, the robustness of the framework, I at some point said, okay, let's try to get 100 keys at once, just to see how it reacts, right? And I have 100 keys here. And so basically what I did is that I created, let me try to find it here. I can make a bulk request with all these keys, right? It's even more than 100 in this case, so maybe I can just go to here, right? No, actually we don't care too much, so I'll just copy it all, right? And I will come back and say, give me all these keys here. I hope there is no enter. Yeah, okay, I think I just, you know what, I'll just generate the keys. Wait, that's probably a character somewhere that's not valid. Let me see if I go here. That might, well, what I want to show you is a bit when you ask too much at once. Yeah, I'll just put that on a single line. I think that's the issue. Let me retry this. So keys, okay. So this should be better. Yes. So here you see I have, let's say, answers for everything. Well, actually, except of course the keys that don't exist, because I only have 100 documents, as you could see in my Cosmos query. So fine, but then I said, okay, and you see that, by the way, it was quite fine to quite fast to return all these keys. But if you look at the content length here, you see this is about 8K. So let me replay this guy. And then let's see, and you see that the content length varies. And that's something I noticed at some point. Oh, there is something weird here. I'm making the same query. I've not touched the actual state store, which is in this case Cosmos, and I have different answers. And now they actually did it correctly, is that, okay, if there is an issue, right, what happened is that I'm using a demo Cosmos DB, right? So I don't want to pay too much for it. And so I have only 400 provisioned RU for the throughput, and then I'm throttled. If I'm asking too much, then that's how Cosmos works. It throttles you, right? And so, but Dapr was not returning this. So now, if they are throttled, then there is any error encountered when they make a query to get a key, specific key, they will basically return it as part of the answer. Before, it was just empty somehow, right? So then you didn't know that there was an error, so you could have thought that the document or the key was actually deleted, right? So, and that's the kind of things that you need to really verify, right? When you use such frameworks, just to make sure, because you don't control everything. That's a goal. You delegate, you offload a lot of stuff to an external framework, but then you need to see, okay, how it reacts in those situations, right? But the Dapr team, let's say, Dapr contributor, it's an open source project, are very responsive, so I mean they tackle these things quite quickly, right? But that was just to show a bit an example of state stores and a bit things to keep in mind. On the other hand, it's unlikely that you will actually make a bulk get of 100 keys at once, but we never know. So with that, let me go to the last demo, which is with the workflows, and I want to show you here, let's say, a bit that's extracted from the Dapr doc, right? And that shows basically they provided the Dapr host, workflow host, sorry, that's just like a console app. that is leveraging the Logic Apps runtime, because now you can actually run Logic Apps and self-host that. Of course, you don't have full feature parity with the Logic Apps of Microsoft. I mean, as if it was when it is hosted by Microsoft, and you can use the bindings of Dapr. That's the value proposal. And then, for instance, I will then run a workflow, Logic App workflow from within AKS, right? That's the purpose of the last demo. So let me then, and we see as well here, you know, the Dapr-D sidecar that I was referring to, right? So that there is a missing, let's say, thing here. So here you could have a rectangle around those two, right? And Dapr-D container is injecting the Dapr host workflow. Okay. So here, what I have done is not this guy. Maybe I can even close it. I will actually keep this one opened. So I will. This is the guy. So I'm already connected to it. So that's good, right? This is the one running my my workflow host. Okay. So I will make a request to this guy, and you will see how that works. Let me try to find the request back. So this one I can close. This is the translation workflow. Okay, so and then I'll show you, of course, the workflow in question. So I'll make a request here, and then the message. So it's just like a very basic workflow, but of course you would have something a bit more advanced, but that's already something that you could have in an enterprise, right? So it's a translation of some input text. Here I just say, okay, thanks guys for joining my session. And basically it's going to be translated by my workflow in French. Here I somehow hard-coded the target language. So let's see if it works first, right? Okay, so maybe it's my connection again of the, let's see, this guy. Okay, yeah, I always need to put a answer somewhere. So here you see that, okay, it detected the language English, so translation was okay. And indeed, you see that the French result has been done. So, and in the meantime, it also saved the translation against a storage account, right? So that's the kind of things that you can do with Dapr. So let me open yet another partial window, because I want to keep this connection open. And I will show you my component here. So of course, again, it works with component. So, okay, come on. This is the one. Okay, so I think that this is translation indeed. And if I say -o YAML, then we have the name of the storage account, and this is the name of the storage account. So if we quickly have a look at the storage account, we'll see that, come on, this is here. We'll see that indeed there is a Dapr doc, let's say, container inside the storage account. Dapr docs. And you see these are the documents, and if of course I run this guy like a few times more, you will see that it will create new documents, right? So my documents are indeed saved into it. So we'll not open it for sake of time, but of course what they contain is the actual translation. So, and the workflow to get something like that, it's actually quite easy. So I'm gonna take this workflow, that's my translation workflow. And to show you that, let's say, well, I can show you, of course, the raw code. So it's really a Logic App workflow, so a declarative workflow. And basically what and I will show you the steps, and to really prove that it's really Logic App, I can just go to any Logic App. And then, let's say, take anyone here, Logic App Designer. And I will basically go into code view. I will just, for a minute, inject this guy, switch back to designer. And you see, so it's, of course, it's Logic App workflow. So it recognized my Dapr Logic App workflow. So I say, okay, trigger is an HTTP request. I'm getting an API key. So there is an interaction with my Azure Key Vault to get the cognitive API for the translation service key, right? So then we have the actual call to the translation service with the key retrieved in the first step. And then we have basically, of course, the body that I received as well in the HTTP trigger. Then we have like, let's say the binding. So to save the contents against my storage account in this case, right? And so you have to, of course, to follow the Dapr, let's say, convention, and then I'm just responding. And you see that, of course, similarly in the Dapr, in the Logic App workflow, you just can use Dapr endpoints, right? So here Dapr is not yet recognized as a real activity in Logic Apps. Maybe they will never do it, I don't know, but at least you see that you can basically talk to Dapper endpoints from Logic Apps as well, right? And then run that, execute those workflows from Kubernetes. So that's also not production ready. Basically, all the things that I showed you today are not production ready, but I think that Dapper is going to be a very, very important frameworks in the years to come, given all the services that it renders, right? So. With that, I don't know if there are questions, so I'll quickly have a look at the chat. I don't think there is any question, by the way. Okay, so well, then let me see. Okay, so producer. Okay, you know what? So anyway, I will recap. If there is no question, that's not an issue. So you could see that basically Dapper it really helps into the invoking services directly. It's integrated with Azure API management. It's also integrated with the Azure functions. So basically Dapper is expanding quite a lot. And also now, I mean, the latest versions, it really becomes a very comprehensive product, right? Where you can have fine-grained also permissions to which service can call which service. Which service can use this component. They also brought the notion of like a virtual domain, a business domain, if you want, in Kubernetes that can be cross namespace. So with some rules that you can basically inject. So it's very, very powerful. So, and with that, I think that I will just finish if there is no question, and I don't see anything popping up. So I guess there is no question. Okay, thank you for having attended the session.